Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. And this story today comes to you from our friends, the chicks on the right, who, next to the Judge Report, are the source of wherever I go all the time for all of my original ideas. Joining us on this program with Steve Green and Scott Ott is an article about a photography project. And the photography project, quote, challenges what it means to be a man. Now, here are some pictures from the photography project, but this story is probably not going to go the way you think I'm going to take it. Because I'm looking at these pictures here, and I think, honestly, truthfully, knock yourself out, guys. I mean it. It's no skin off of my nose. I'm happy that you're comfortable. I'm happy that their body issues and body insecurities being addressed and fine. I have no hostility towards these people. I have nothing, no animosity, nothing. But I'll tell you what I think is important. What they're basically saying is that all of these people and so on are, in fact, a man. Well, that's pretty obvious to me, too. But I also know what's going on here. And what's going on here is the desire to define down what being a man is. And when we say being a man, we don't mean being male. We all know what being a man is. Well, those of us above a certain age anyway. Those of us below a certain age haven't got the slightest idea. But we're not talking about that. What they're trying to do with this article, and again, I really feel no hostility towards these people. I wish them a very happy life. I genuinely do. But what they're trying to do here, what the progressives are trying to do here, is they're trying to define away the entire idea of manhood as opposed to maleness. Manhood means things to people of a certain age. Certainly Stephen Scott and I have the same basic idea of what it means. And when somebody says, hey, you got to be a man, that doesn't mean, hey, it's time for you to become a male. It means it's time for you to do some difficult things that we expect of men. Sometimes women have to man up too. But nevertheless, that's the point. So, Steve, let's start with you. What is it that they are challenging here, do you think?
Oh boy! Before I get to that, let me tell you why I love my wife. Just a little anecdote from Saturday night that you made me think of when you said sometimes women have to man up too. We were having dinner at our awesome neighbor couple's house. Our kids all play, and we get along with them, and it's just great. And Reno, this was fairly late at night after dinner, was pouring shots of tequila, and he might have been using a slightly heavy hand pouring those shots. And my wife said, as she always does in these situations, she lifted up the glass and said, "Cowgirl up." Boom. Done. That's
you got to marry a woman like that.
That's the girl I love. So yeah, this thing. What I think this is a fundamental assault on masculine virtues. Not just manning up, not just being the tough guy.
That's right.
But on the masculine virtues. And what I think this is really is it's just the It's the progressive left's latest attack on Western civilization. They come at you from whatever angle they can think of. They come at you through the education system. They dumbing down education until a college diploma today is worth maybe as much as a high school diploma was 50 or 60 years ago. So they dumb us down. They infest the economy with all of this Marxism that makes us far poorer than we should be as a nation. There was a study out a few years ago that Reason published that I couldn't even write about. It was so sad that the cost of government regulation takes about 2% of GDP off the top of the economy every year, going back to about 1946 is when they could get the best numbers for the study, which means that if it weren't for this infestation of progressive values in our economy, the average family would be earning about $300,000 a year instead of about $50,000 a year. So that's what its cost is. And they come at the progressives. They come at you from whatever angle they can think of. And right now, the new angle is defining masculinity down. And I'll tell you, who was it that coined the phrase "men with no chest"? Was that C.S. Lewis?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, we're getting there, aren't we, Bill?
Yeah, we're getting there pretty fast. And that's the goal, of course. Scott, I'd be willing to wager that most of the people that you valued as heroes and role models growing up were basically completely infested with toxic masculinity.
Superman and Batman, baby.
So once again, just for those of you with cognitive disadvantages. We're not talking about saying that the people in this program aren't men, and we're not saying that they don't deserve to have their own lives and so on and so on and so on. But what we are saying is that whatever you want to say about the people in these photographs, they certainly don't seem to be reeking of toxic masculinity. So, Scott, what is it? What is toxic masculinity, and why is it under such assault all across the board here in our society today?
I think the saddest thing about this, and this has been going on for a long time, is not necessarily what it does to men, although it's certainly taken a toll on them, sowed confusion among little boys about what's appropriate behavior, made you feel like if you did something that was traditionally viewed as a masculine value, or if you behaved in concert with such a value, that there was something wrong with you. I mean, and I know people are going to jump all over me for this, but I often joke that when I was going to elementary school, ADD was spelled BOY. And I think that it was,
yes.
most of the kinds of behavior, not all, but most of the kinds of behavior that I see that are becoming, being treated with psychotropic drugs and being dealt with as if they were a major problem in society have to do with the differences between how females and males think and the difficulty that a female teacher has in managing a tribe of boys. It is a challenge under the best of circumstances, but if you think that it's a birth defect, then you approach it in a completely different manner. But what I think is, yes, it's devastating to young men, but it's also devastating to women, because the message here is that if you're different than a man, you're not good enough. You don't measure up. It's like we want to say that women are free to be whoever they want to be. But if that means that you're free to be a mom, caring for her kids, maybe even working from the home, managing the household. I mean, read Proverbs 31. The woman in Proverbs 31 was no pushover. I mean, she was managing a business. She was buying property. She was making things with her own hands. She was taking care of the household and basically running what would be considered to be a small entrepreneurial organization today. If you do that, you're not good enough. There's something wrong with you. And if you are a man and you are not acting like a woman, well, then you're not good enough either. And I think it is just an inherent confusion among a whole generation or several generations of people now that show me the good things that it's led to. I am glad to see men who are gracious and gentle, especially with their wives. I am glad to see women that are bold risk takers, in business or whatever. But I think if you get carried away and basically start blackballing people who go against what you consider to be one generic gender norm, then you really tear people down. You're not lifting people up.
I realized as we were getting into this story that what really is happening here in this story is an example of something I talk about in my current firewall called the Republic of Emotion, where I talk about a person who was born a male identifies as a girl. So this teenager basically ran in the girls' competition in Connecticut and won every single event. And I said, why? Why do all the rest of these girls have to face an opponent that they can't possibly beat? And I realized that the answer is that if the sexes are not completely equal because we want them to be so, then that means there's irreducible differences between men and women. And if there are irreducible differences between men and women, that means there's an external reality that is not compliant to our wishes and our rhetoric. And if that's the case, then everything the progressives believes fall down, right? I mean, there's no free health care, wars, the whole thing. So what they're basically trying to do here is they're trying to say that by showing men as soft and feminine, the entire idea of men as strong and tough is a false construction, needs to be destroyed and thrown away with the rest of the cultural garbage that they want to clear. But the problem is that this is just not how things work. There is, in fact, a difference. Please don't point to me to exceptions, because by pointing to exceptions that you can name on your fingers, you're proving the rule. Men tend to be less emotional than women. They tend to be able to compartmentalize their thoughts and emotions, and that provides them with certain disadvantages, which we never hear the end of, but also certain advantages, especially in times of great stress and strain, when focus and courage and sort of a dispassionate analysis of the situation and action is required. And that's what basically being a man is. The reason that our fathers taught us, you can't cry, you got to be a man now, what were they basically doing? What was going on there? What they were trying to do was they were trying to point out to us as boys, we are wired in such a way that we can in fact compartmentalize our feelings, and you can grieve about this afterwards and you can cry about it afterwards, but right now somebody's got to do something, and that somebody's going to have to be you. So since you can get it under control, get it under control. And that's the reason that this article is offensive to me. Not because it's celebrating different people's sexuality and their idea of manhood. Congratulations. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm very happy for you. I'm happy you get to live the life you want to live in America. But what I'm not happy about is the destruction of actual manliness and the idea that it's basically a fiction, especially the idea that it's toxic. So I'll just leave you with one very brief story about this toxicity that these feminists and the rest of the crowd are constantly talking about. I was very privileged to watch an actual test flight of an experimental airplane over the last weekend. Wasn't a big military program, but it was probably flight number 5 or 6 of a flight program where a lot of bugs have to be worked out. And the briefing was being conducted by the test pilot. And the test pilot was a young guy, probably in his mid-30s, and his wife was there. He loves to fly. His entire life has been flying. His wife doesn't like to fly. She gets sick every time she gets in an airplane, but she flies with him anyway. During this briefing, there's a number of things that are going to happen. There's a number of airspeeds that we want to determine. There's a number of reactions of the aircraft and so on. And as a professional, he went through the briefing exceedingly carefully, exceedingly slowly, and very, very unemotionally. And one of the parts that struck me as just as common as, here's the radio frequencies, here's where we're going to go, here's what we're going to do, was a part of the briefing where he said, now, if we lose control of the airplane, here's going to be the procedure. I'm going to count on you in the chase plane to let me know when we hit 5,000 feet. When we're at 5,000 feet, and if the airplane's still under control, I'm going to try to get out of the airplane. Okay, point number 7, and on we go. Now, you may say that that's bravado, and you may say that, well, you know, it sounds good because it never happens. But in point of fact, during that particular flight, everything was going the way a test flight's supposed to go. It was very, very boring. And as he's doing a series of stalls, I can hear him making the transmission on the radio, stick forces, airspeeds, and so on. And in the calmest voice imaginable, as if, hey, it's a beautiful day out here, he said, I just heard a significant bang in the back of the aircraft, and we are terminating the flight. And so now we're coming back to the airport at minimum flying speed and at minimum G angles because it's possible he's lost the control surfaces. And if the control surfaces are gone, you're in some trouble. Yeah. But as it turns out, by keeping a cool head and everything else, and the redundancy of the design, turned out it really wasn't much of anything at all. But here's my point. That's actual courage. It's not the courage of having a different opinion, which can hurt your feelings. This is the courage of facing the fact that maybe I'll be killed during this particular line of work that I'm in. And his wife shown a lot of courage too, because she was there for the briefing and she listened as her husband, who she adores, talked about, and the father-to-be, by the way, talked about what he will do today if it turns out that a situation arises where his life is such imminent danger that he's going to have to try and bail out of an out-of-control airplane. And she stuck with him with that as well. This is what being a man is all about. That woman had courage. The wife has a great deal of courage. It's kind of emotional courage. But the kind of courage that the husband showed was the kind of cool, rational, confident, intelligent assessment of risk, a determination of what to do in the case of a bad outcome, but ultimately then going up there and doing something that could take your life because he thinks it's important. I think it's important too. The world has been made safe for people to be openly gay and transgendered by people, mostly men of actual physical courage. And if we decide that as a society we want to eliminate this not only from the gene pool, but from the entire cultural toolbox that we have as a people, then the results will not be advantageous. And the people who are going to get hurt the most are going to be the people who you may not think of as particularly strong men to begin with. That'll do it for our right angle for today. Thanks very much for joining us. These shows are made possible by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. And if you'd like to go to BillWhittle.com, become a member, we'd love to have you. We will see you next time.